Eat Sleep Boxing Repeat. Delighted to be joined by Elliott Grigg for another weekly roundtable. Elliott, we've got a few things to discuss. Not going to waste much time. How are you? What did you think of last night's boxing? It was an eventful night, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I think it was, yeah, like you say, it was a very eventful night. There's a lot of talking points that seem to have come out of it, which we'll obviously touch on. The main event, some of the pacing of the show, Fraser Clark as well. But yeah, it was a kind of odd night, but also a compelling one. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We've got other things to discuss as well as the show last night. But want to get into the main event, the Liam Smith, Hassan Mwakinyo stoppage situation was very odd. Obviously, post fight, I think Johnny Nelson came out and just said like Mwakinyo's kind of taken a dive, just kind of felt Liam Smith's power and kind of didn't want anything else to do with it. I think there were some other comments basically regarding Mwakinyo's kind of body language, the fact he didn't enter the UK until Thursday night, which probably wasn't a good sign. Yeah, interested to get your general thoughts on how the fight finished. What were your thoughts when you were watching it?
I think I don't know. I don't agree with Johnny Nelson, which comes as probably no surprise. I think it's one of those sad things where it's almost becoming either clickbait nonsense or Nelson nonsense, whichever one of the two it is. I don't know whether it's instructed to talk such rubbish or whether he just does it off innately. But I think to me it looked like Mwakinyo. I think it looked like he was injured. He'd injured himself. I think like that. Whether there was something troubling him, like that ankle or whatever it was, whether that was the reason why he came over late. But he looked like he was struggling. And I think in that situation, it was a difficult one between. I don't think he took a dive because, well, he didn't take a dive. He kind of just went down as if to be like, I don't know, I'm injured or I'm hurt, whatever. The ref for me stopped it prematurely. I don't think he wasn't right. And then also, I don't understand why he stopped it. If you're stopping it because he's been hit a few times, then he was hit when he was down. So either you then surely move it to a no contest, or it's possibly the extreme end of the scale, even disqualify Smith for hitting him when he was down in that position. I know he hadn't fully touched down, but he was clearly it was one of those ones where on the grey scale, it didn't sit well to see Smith do what he did, to be perfectly honest. And I know, obviously, in this country we've had Martinez obviously get that no contest for hitting Edwards. I mean, Edwards did have a knee on the ground at the time, but Martinez had spent the preceding sort of 30 seconds punching him. So it's almost like, it's just one of those things where it's almost like in the rhythm, whereas Smith threw when the guy had already gone down. So, yeah, I think it was bizarre. I don't think he took a dive. I think it looked like he was hurt and was possibly trying to not through the actual fight itself, but carrying an injury into it, and was trying to sort of cope with that and maybe sort of get to the end of the round to see where he was going to go from there.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was just people have different opinions on what happened. I just think one thing is that we've not had a kind of a proper conclusion to a fight, so it just kind of felt like this was the main event. It ended with a bit of a damp squib. But I think what's happened. Liam Smith's been awarded the TKO victory. What do you think would have happened if the referee? I think you mentioned you thought the referee stopped it prematurely. I agree with you. What do you think would have happened if he hadn't done? I think there was a minute or so left in the fourth round. What do you think was going to happen?
I think in a weird way, depending on obviously, I mean, he was obviously troubled by what had happened. So, and the physical condition he was saying. So I think, to be perfectly honest, Smith's smooth enough operator to stick it on him for that final minute anyway. So there's a chance. There's a chance, obviously, that the fight could have come to a natural conclusion anyway in that time. But also, I just think, I just kind of feel I mean, Liam Smith's got 19 KOs out of 32 fights, so obviously there's power there, to be fair. But I just think, I think Smith would have won given the injury. It's just a case of whether they'd have gone. I mean, was it fourth round, wasn't it? On the whether it would have gone scorecards for a decision at that point or not, I don't know. Or whether they've just declared it a draw if enough rounds hadn't been completed. But I think if he was that troubled, probably may not have even come out at the end of the round and just sacked it off there, which would have been fairer than what happened to him in the end. Which almost seemed like a bit of a. I mean, obviously, I know Smith's headlining in Liverpool, but it almost seemed like one of those sort of British decisions where you kind of just go, let's set the fireworks off, celebrate it, and then we'll worry about it tomorrow, sort of thing, rather than sort of dealing with it, what happened appropriately, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I think what's happened, and there isn't going to be any kind of further action. And this was very much a keep busy / kind of warm up fight for Liam Smith. And yeah, that's what it was. I don't think we're going to be talking about this fight in a week or a month to come. It's one of those fights that will fade away over the next few days. And we'll be talking about what's next for Liam Smith. We'll move on. One person I want to talk about is Adam Azim. Went 6-0 last night. Another first round KO. That's his third first round KO in a row. He's gone up against guys with good records. He's not fighting journeyman. We don't know if kind of they're selecting people that he is going to get out of there quickly or not. But yeah, the fact remains he does look impressive, and he is being touted as someone who could become a world champion in the next 2 years. What I want your opinion on, although it's hard to tell, we barely see him in the ring. Is he? Is this guy the real deal? Are you impressed by him? What are your thoughts on Adam Azim so far?
Massively impressed, yeah. I think I know there's been a bit of a buzz for some time, and people were saying, he'll be a world champion within sort of 2 years, and there was that sense of sort of like, I had that sort of sense of, calm down a little, fundamentally, just because you're sort of looking at that point, obviously, of like, I suppose Taylor will move up potentially, but obviously with him being in that position and Cattle and those names as well. But you look at it now and you actually think there's every chance. To be honest with you, especially like if he's moved well, I think obviously we need the next fight. We need to see him move up quite significantly in opposition. But yeah, I think talent wise, it looks possibly almost shot up now to. I mean, obviously you've got those other young prospects around the UK like Price, McCann, those sort of guys, to name a few. But he's almost shot now to the top of that pile. Every time you see him come out, he looks very, very impressive. It'll be quite hard to match, I suppose, coming up. Obviously, he's in the same division as Dalton Smith as well. Be interesting to see sort of how he moves over the next year, but definitely impressed. Definitely it's a real deal. Shane McGuigan, yeah, definitely got a future world champion on his hands there.
Yeah, I think one thing that was interesting about last night's fight was he was actually fighting a guy who, wasn't undefeated, had some losses in the past, but he had never been stopped yet. A minute and a half into the first round, the guy just clearly kind of went down, and in my opinion, he could have got back up, but just chose not to because he thought, I don't really want to. I've kind of had enough of this, to be honest. So yeah, it is very exciting. I'm fully on the hype train, to be honest. I think I've seen him box in Coventry and in London at Wembley Arena as well, and he is the real deal. He's got one of the best trainers in the country. He's part of a fantastic stable. So, and he's only 20 years old. So it's pretty scary that he's that good age of 20 and could be world champion by 21, 22 possibly. So we will see. I think Ryland Charlton is a name that's been discussed. I think that would be kind of a good step up next. I saw someone on our Twitter responding to one of our tweets earlier saying Akeem Ennis-Brown, which I think would be really intriguing if you consider how awkward Akeem Ennis-Brown is and quite experienced. I don't think he's going to fight him next, but I think that would be really intriguing in 6 months, say. But yeah, we will see what's next for Adam Azim.
And a tough one is you're look in that division as well, like someone like Harlem Eubank sitting there with sort of 15-0. Is Azim, in your opinion, better than Harlem Eubank right now?
I can't say that because Azim's like he's not faced a name yet, whereas I feel like Harlem Eubank has. I'm not saying he's kind of a world beater just yet, but he's faced names that people have heard of and people with better records. But we don't know. But at the same time, look, do I think he's going to face Harlem Eubank next? No, because he's only had 6 fights. If he has another 2 or 3 fights, and if he faces Ryan Charlton and blows him out inside 1 round, or faces Akeem Ennis-Brown and does the same thing, then yeah, like a Harlem Eubank in 6 to 9 months, I think is possible, because it gets to the point where he needs rounds. Like I know Shane McGuigan has openly said that he makes sure he gets very tough sparring for him because he needs people who he can go rounds with, because he's not actually getting rounds when it comes to ring time. So it's an interesting one, because at the same time, at some point he is going to need someone who gives him rounds, because he can't then come up against a a Dalton Smith or a Jack Catterall having not boxed more than 2 rounds, basically.
Yeah. And what was interesting just on that, what I did observe last night, which is, obviously when you see them guys warming up backstage, you saw Elamazim throwing that shot several times, in the setup as well, and then you sort of see it in the fight. It was actually impressive. Usually, you just see people sort of dancing around a bit and warming up, but they seem to be going through that sort of specifically, and it did sort of pan out. Obviously, a minute and a half into the fight, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. We will see what's next for Adam Azim. Moving swiftly on, moving away from Liverpool, we've got to talk about the latest developments with Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. I feel like we're talking about Tyson Fury, and I think that's exactly what he wants us to do. I don't know what you're aware of, what you're not aware of. I feel like this is an ongoing story that's changing every day. I'm going to tell you what I understand, and you can possibly add to that or can say your opinion as well. Tyson Fury was at a WWE event in Cardiff last night, and I think that maybe says what he might be doing for the next few months rather than boxing. He could be fighting Roman Reigns or somebody else in a WWE ring rather than Alexander Usyk. Who knows? At the same time, I think Usyk has said he's not ready to fight Fury in December, and Fury's kind of said he wants to now fight someone else. There's lots of moving parts to this and lots of things going on, and obviously with it being Tyson Fury, we don't know what's true and what's not. We don't know what's actually going to happen. I just want your opinion on what you think is going to happen. Do you still think we're going to see Fury Usyk next? If you do think that, when do you think we're going to see it?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about Fury obviously wanting us to talk about it. I don't think we'll see it next, just for the reason I just know. Well, the reason I say that is it definitely, it won't happen in December, and I think seemingly everyone other than sort of diehard Fury fans can accept that Usyk might want to see his family and go home for a bit and not run straight into fighting Tyson Fury. So I've seen some odd comments on our socials, people referring to it as a duck, which is just, it's just pathetic. But I think that's not even trolling comments where you go, "Well, that's quite funny." Like people who are seemingly saying it as a legitimate opinion and therefore should have it as their last. But I think we'll see it. But I think, to be honest with you, I actually would like to see Fury fight again this year. I feel like dicking around in WWE, not fighting again, and then potentially fighting Usyk next in May or April or something, doesn't really sit right either. I think he'd need another fight just to sort of tie him over. I can understand that the sort of challenge in the heavyweight division for him, other than Usyk, isn't necessarily there. To be perfectly honest, I know other people are sort of tied up, so it's not going to happen. But you almost want to see him fight someone of sort of Parker's level, just get that out of the way. Sort of have maybe even do it, not on obviously a stadium sellout, but on a kind of arena, sort of fight against one of those names, like a Parker or a Joyce, and then go into Usyk. Obviously that'd be nearly, if you have the ring for a year for them before going into that fight, which I think, to be honest with you, I still think he'll win it. I just think, I'm not necessarily saying he's better than Usyk as a boxer, but I just think the size difference for me, I can't see beyond Usyk bridging that difference in talent to size ratio. So I think he'll win it, but I just think, maybe I'd like to see him fight in December. Whether he will or not, I don't know. But I don't think we won't see it this year. And I think if we don't see it next, as in if it's not organised next, and Usyk obviously is 35, 36, going on 36, will want to get out and fight. He was talking mostly about fighting Joshua again. I think just because probably there's a large amount of money that comes out to Joshua. So if you're not going to fight Fury, there'll be money for him, I suppose, if we fought someone like Wilder. We'll see how that goes. But I just think that's a money fight for Usyk. It makes sense. But I think with Fury, you just don't know, do you? He could quite conceivably go and fight in the WWE, then fight that lad out of the UFC, then claim to be retired and sing a few songs, and then come back again. So it doesn't. I think we will see it, but I don't think we'll see it next.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing about all of this is that I don't think what Fury wants to do is wait until February, March, April, by which time he's been out the ring for a significant period. I don't think you want to, and if you consider his last fight wasn't the most competitive fight, I reckon his team or his coach or whoever are saying to him, don't fight Usyk after a year out the ring. I don't think that makes sense for him. So what I don't see happening is Fury Usyk happening in February, March without Fury having a fight in between.
Do you okay? Who would you match him against in that next fight? Because who do you think could really push him to a point where it'd be, I suppose, a worthwhile endeavor?
So, and that's the question: like, is he gonna have a tough fight, or is he gonna fight another kind of Tom Schwartz? We don't know. Like a fight I'd love to see is if Joyce beats. If Joyce beats Joseph Parker in September, could he then fight Fury in February? Because there's a narrative there. Because obviously Tyson Fury and Joseph Parker are good friends, train together. Joe Joyce beats Joseph Parker. There's a storyline there, right? And Joe Joyce would be some sort of mandatory anyway. Like maybe not for Fury's belt, but I think that fight then makes sense. However, does Fury fancy fighting Joe Joyce, who I think is a tough night for anyone? And then fighting Usyk, I don't know. There's so many kind of moving parts here and so many things to discuss. And I think the truth is I don't think either of us really know what's going to happen. I just think one thing's certain: we're not going to see Fury Usyk fight in December. I don't think that was realistic anyway. And I don't think we're going to see it in February because I don't think that's what Fury wants. But it's so annoying. There's so many things to discuss.
Which way do you lean on that fight? Have you got leaning either way on that yet? On the
I'm lean towards Fury. I'm not as confident as I was, but I would still lean towards Fury based on I just think he uses his size effectively, and Anthony Joshua didn't do that in either fight against Usyk. I've actually got a prediction. I'm not convinced it would be a great fight, Fury and Usyk, to be honest, because I think Fury could just kind of make it boring and just kind of lean on him for 12 rounds. So I'm not convinced it would be a classic fight. But yeah, I would back Fury to beat Usyk, probably on points. Actually, yeah, that would be where I would lean to.
Yeah. I feel a bit for Usyk because obviously he's got a lot of respect in and out of boxing. Comes out with a lot of great quotes as well, but you just almost feel like because Fury's so sort of tongue in cheek, it doesn't matter. Like I know, the press conference would be worth it just to see what Fury did as well, how both men responded. I'm not saying he rattled Usyk, but it'd be very different, I think, from the press conferences if we saw between Joshua and Usyk, wouldn't it?
Yeah. We shall see what happens. We'll see what happens. Maybe next week we'll be discussing this again, and something else would change. Who knows? To finish off with, we are last night. Juan Francisco Estrada was in action in Mexico. He won his fight, and it was announced immediately afterwards he is having a trilogy against Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez in December. This was personally the second fight, was my fight of the year in 2021. A fantastic fight that was well worth staying up until 4 or 5 in the morning for. Loved it. Loved the fact we're getting a trilogy. We kind of have had to wait quite a long time for the trilogy to happen, but it's finally here. Just your initial thoughts on that fight being announced.
Can't wait for it. I agree with you. Yeah, I love but both the fights I enjoyed, to be perfectly honest. But I think I think Chocolatito is one of those ones where seems to be within boxing fandoms like the darlings in boxing. Everyone seems to love him, but no one's really heard of him outside of boxing. But yeah, I just love watching him fight. Absolutely love watching him fight. So buzzing that he's back. I mean, what is he now? 35. A lot of miles on the clock as well. A lot of fights. So I think just enjoy everyone while we can, sort of thing now for his career. And I think it's one of those ones where styles make fights, and these two just gel so well that I'm delighted to see it happen again.
Yeah, of course, it's one of those where the first 2 fights were great. The third one's going to be great, and it's 1-1 in my opinion. Look, when it's 1-1, you should see a third fight. You kind of need a decider. I think an example that springs to mind here was Carl Frampton, Leo Santa Cruz. I was desperate to see a third fight there because Carl Frampton, I thought he did win the first fight, and Leo Santa Cruz quite clearly won the second fight. Both close fights on points. And obviously Carl Frampton's retired now, and the fact we never saw a third fight was dreadful. So we need to see trilogies when it's 1 fight each. You have to have a third fight, in my opinion. You can't not do.
100%. No, I totally agree. And yeah, I'm just like you, man. I'm really excited for it. I'm a lot more excited for this trilogy fight than I am for the one that's coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we should more to come on that. Elliot, thank you for your time. It's been a packed show. We've been great to get everything in on time. But yeah, lots to discuss, and there'll be lots to discuss in what will be a packed rest of 22 for the sport of boxing. I'll speak to you soon, okay?
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for watching. Speak to you soon.